All right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody. Today is January 28th. This is our regular meeting of the Hutchinson Utilities Commission. We'll start out. Agenda item number 1 is declaring any conflicts of interest by any of the commissioners today.
None.
None.
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, and that is commission reorganization. 2A is the president, Don Martinez. Anybody care to make a motion?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Tom, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 2A is approved. 2B is the vice president, Tom Lambert.
I'll make a motion for Tom Lambert as vice president.
I will second.
Motion by Kathy, second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 2B is approved. Item 2C is to appoint Secretary Matt Cheney.
I make a motion to appoint Secretary Matt Cheney.
And I'll second.
Motion by Tom, second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 2C is approved. 2D is to appoint legal counsel.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mark Sabora as legal counsel.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy to appoint Mark Sabora. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 2D is approved. Agenda item 2E is to appoint recording secretary.
I'll make a motion to appoint Angie Radke as the recording secretary.
Motion by Don,
Second.
second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 2F, or 2E is approved. Agenda item 2F is to designate depositories for the utilities funds. Any questions on that, any of the commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve the depositories for utility funds, Citizens Bank and Trust, Wells Fargo Bank, Wells Fargo Advisors, Home State Bank, Morgan Stanley, and Cetera Investment Services.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 2F, depositories is approved. Agenda item 3 is to approve the consent agenda with the minutes and the ratified payment of bills.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second.
second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Agenda item 4 is to approve the financial statements. I don't see Jerry today.
No, he's hanging around just in case the auditors have any more questions here. So they're out here obviously doing field work today, so this will probably be their last day out here, and then they'll wrap up and finish their stuff back at the office. And I would guess we'll be around the same general time frame. They'll wrap up the preliminary audit, get it to us, we'll make sure we review it, and then I'm guessing probably sometime in March, then we'll approve the final audited financial statements, and then we'll be able to submit that stuff down to the city so that they can wrap our stuff into theirs and have theirs ready to go by the end of June. So that's where he's at, but I'll just kind of touch on some highlights within the financial statements. Again, you've got year to date. Keep in mind, we still have to make a few entries yet, as we've kind of talked about over the years. We've still got the pension liability entry that has to be made. We won't probably get the pension numbers from the state probably for another several weeks yet, but that will need to be made, and then we'll have to make those other post-employment benefit liability entries as well. That will change the balance sheets inflows and outflows, and then obviously have an impact on our salary and wages expense areas. So there are a few other pieces that need to be made. In addition, there's a new government pronouncement that's out there, sick leave. So now governments need to report what their estimated next year's sick payout's going to be for people that use sick in a calendar year. So I think Jared just made that entry today. That's about $150,000 expense, and then a liability on the books for that. Even though that sick is part of their normal wages for the year, you still have to now show as another government pronouncement the next year's sick. So we're going to have another liability, and it's going to affect our expense. But just another odd one that they've added with the post-employment benefits and the pension. So you'll see that on a revised financial statement when it comes through next month. Otherwise, kind of just high level, and we ended up better than we did last year to date. At this point, again, we still have to get a couple entries, but overall things look pretty well for the year. When you look at the combined divisions as a whole, again, we've talked a little bit about our sales for resales that surpassed last year by $3.1 million. Again, we had a lot of market sales, and I've touched on that. We had some big months in April, June, July, August, where we had extensive generation, extensive high prices, and so a lot more revenue on the sales side of things within the market. And then obviously conversely on the expense side, our obviously fuel budget was up because we were generating way more, so we had significantly more in fuel costs on that side. But overall, it was a positive impact, not only to our financial statements, but also to then the retail rate customers with our mechanism. So things went pretty well from that standpoint of things. Particularly on the electric side of things, again, we've touched on when you look at consumption year to date, we almost hit our budget. We're at 99.5% of what our budget was, so we came in fairly close. That's the best we've come in the last couple of years. So we saw a little bit better demand, not only in the winter months, but also a little bit more stabilization on the weather in the summer months. So we trended pretty close to budget. Again, we've touched a little bit on the difference between the large general and the industrial class. Why that looks a little bit skewy is we obviously changed the customer from the industrial customer class to the large general. And we talked about that with our auditors of why there was such a variance there. So just kind of kept you guys abreast of that. Really from a retail rate standpoint, when you look at the retail rate revenue, it looks fairly consistent, customer revenue year to date, 2025 to 2024, but really there was a big difference in the power cost adjustment from one year to the next, and that change was about $970,000 difference in retail revenue. So last year we ended up passing on a power cost adjustment of $556,000 in additional revenue that we collected to offset our cost of power. In 2025, we actually gave back $414,000 in credits. So there's a net difference of almost $1 million that typically if we would have had a consistent year like 24, we would have had an additional almost $970,000 on our revenue on the retail customer line. So even though year over year looks the same, there were two mechanisms that really shifted, and a lot of that had to do with the increased market sales from generating into the MISO market. So just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Otherwise, trended better than the budget for the year. Again, a lot of it was the market sales helped control a lot of those costs on that side. On the gas side of things trended fairly well. When you look at our actual usage, the budget's at 94%, but a portion of that budget is in decatherms, and so when you annualize that out to MCF, the measurement, we actually came in at about 97.6% of our budget, so not quite as close as we were on the electric, but better than what we've been in the past too. So we saw a little bit colder December this year than we did last year, a little bit even in November. So we ended up making up some ground from the first part of the year, which was January, February was a little bit down. So overall came fairly close on that side. Same type of thing as far as impacts to the retail customer. We had $443,000 worth of fuel credits back to the retail customer last year in 2024. In 2025, this last fiscal year, it was over $1 million. So the customer saw an additional $565,000 in positive impact on their bills. So when you look at the change between those two mechanisms year over year, it's almost $1.5 million of additional benefit the customers got last year with our generating fleet and how we manage our rates and then our stabilization fund mechanisms. So I don't feel like that's going to be, obviously that's not going to be the case in 2026 with our new budget and how we're running those mechanisms. But still it was a good year for 2025 when it related to that. On the balance sheet side of things, I was estimating going into the end of the year that we were going to end up with about $19.5 to $19 million worth of cash. We ended up at 18.5, so a little bit less than what I forecasted. We did have some larger project bills come in right at the end of the year that we ended up paying for, so I was a little bit off on that, but knew we'd be below the $20 million mark, and then I knew we would be on the negative cash balance on the electric side as well. So you can see through December we're at negative $416,000, and that will grow a little bit with a couple entries that need to be made. So when we get our financial statements presentation, when that CAFR comes, you won't see a negative cash balance because we won't present it on the financial statements that way. We'll have an interfund due from one division to the next, so the gas division will be covering the negative cash balance on the balance sheet. I'm still showing you that on the monthly financials to keep it in front of you guys as we talk about strategically how we fund not only the back half of this project, but then going into the Wilmer Line project. So we'll have those conversations here. I'm thinking probably April when Kathy gets back, and hopefully we'll have another board member on, and then we can really talk about where do we want to go. So I talked about that with our auditors as well. They asked, one, did you know that we had a negative cash balance? They said, sure, yeah, I did. We knew we had it, and we're going to be working through how we want to manage that long term. And talked about the payback from the transmission projects and how we have to just cash flow some things. But overall, fairly close to where I projected, so nothing was really out of the ordinary that Jared and I thought would be there. Otherwise, things trended pretty well. The other piece that's in here that we usually put in the end of the packet, and Dan usually provides me these at the end of the year, is some additional charts for you guys to take a look at, outside of just the normal charts that you get with the financial statements. We've got the average system load in there for 2025's chart relative to the last couple of years, so you can see over the last couple of years on average 2025 we had a higher load in the summertime, but it trended fairly consistent to that kind of load profile. But you can see where we were off a little bit here or there to the good in some areas, and then in the spring we were behind some averages. But just gives you a general pictorial of kind of where load is. And then the next one was the annual generation. Obviously, no surprise, in 2025 we generated a lot more because of the higher market prices and the sustained amount of elevation. So we generated a lot more than we typically have in the past. We had a pretty good year in 2023, but we blew by that in 2025. But just gives you an idea of kind of where our generation has been, and you can see we have been increasing generation over a 20-year time span because of that elevated price. And half of it, some of it has to do with elevated pricing because of retirements of generation and increased load forecasts, renewables coming on, stuff not getting through queues to be built quick enough, and so all those things are creating some constraints in the market. So it provides us some opportunities then for additional generation and capitalizing on that. Annual system load was up from 2024 and 23, but still down from a lot of years. You can see with 2021, kind of the COVID years, it was up, and then we've touched on this in the past several times. Of after COVID, we've seen a shift in business patterns in town. We've seen some people ramp down things. We've seen increased efficiencies with equipment that's driven some of that. We've had some additional solar that's come online that's eaten in some net load things, and so we've had a lot of different things happening. Weather has played a part in that as well. Over the last several years, we just didn't quite meet budget with unseasonably cooler weather in the summertime and particularly. But overall, we bounced back a little bit, but still, when you look kind of at a holistic long-term period, we're still significantly down from the good old days or the heydays here. And obviously, as we try to grow customer base and grow economic development, we want to continually try to improve that load and also diversify the load. We've touched on that. We have one big customer that is a third of our load, and that doesn't sit well for bond rating agencies and diversification. So we're working on a lot of those things in the community, and some of those things will help, and hopefully we'll see some continual growth moving forward, and that will put us in a better position. The next one is really the load duration curve that Dan put together, and that one just kind of shows you the breakdown of where we're getting our power from, and then how much power we end up having to sell back into the market. Again, for just a reminder, we have a 25 megawatt baseload contract with Missouri River Energy Services, so we get 25 megawatts, 8,760 hours a year. And anytime our load in the community is below that 25 megawatts, we end up having to sell it back. And so you can see we have a small percentage that we sell back. But overall, it trends fairly consistently. Because we had increased load in 2025, a little bit less of our overall load makeup was from the contract, Missouri River. But you can still see over a good period of time, anywhere from 75 to 80% of our normal electric load needs is coming from our base load contract. And then the rest is coming either from what we generate in the community or we buy off the market. So those are really the three pieces of the pie that make up where we get our power from. And then the other graph that's in here is really the energy. And so Dan's been trending that since 2005, and it shows you really the correlation of what the average pricing has been that we've been buying power off the market, and the correlation of what the real-time pricing was on market and how that correlates to natural gas prices. And so as you've seen spikes and peaks in the gas pricing, so too, generally speaking, you can see some elevated pricing in the market as well. We still up in the MISO region, particularly in the north region, is still fairly concentrated with coal and natural gas as the biggest two primary energy generating sources for electricity. Wind is a portion of it now, and nuclear is a portion of it. Wind has grown a little bit, but it's still overwhelmingly when generated electricity is needed. Usually 70% of it's coming from coal and natural gas, and then the other 30% is coming from a combination of renewables, nuclear, some hydro. But it just gives you kind of a picture of how the markets, fluctuate with each other, and how the electric industry and electric pricing correlates with natural gas pricing. And so that's important for us because of the market that we're in. And then really on the investment reports, really nothing significant there. We've touched a little bit on that. We were keeping a lot of our cash short for fluidity reasons because of a large project. So a lot of that stuff where we had some stuff laddered on the back end of the long-term scale and the short end in more of that barbell approach is now more laddered to the front end. And as we talk about financing, or we end up doing some different things, if we have opportunities to ladder some things out a little bit longer term, we will. But most of that stuff we're just going to keep short now until we get through, this 4 or 5 kind of year project kind of time frame of things, and then we'll obviously take advantage of interest earnings where we can once we see kind of how our cash flow will stabilize over the next few years. So it's a lot of information. Tried doing high level. Is there any questions on the graphs or anything on the financials that had any concerns from the commission, or things that we wanted to touch on a little bit more?
None for me.
For me.
No.
Okay.
Anybody care to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to approve the financial statements.
Motion by
Lulled you to sleep.
Second.
Second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda item 4 is approved.
No
Thanks, guys.
negative.
That wasn't
I'm
awkward.
out here.
Well, to be fair, usually
Snacks or
Jared
pop
talks,
here or
then
something.
Jeremy talks, and then we make a
Right.
A little coffee here. Agenda item 5 is the open forum. I don't see any new guests today, so we'll move on to agenda item 6, communication, starting with 6A at city administrator. Annette?
Just a couple things. I think since the last time you guys met, I know the city council approved our side of the solar array projects. The buildings, I think there's 14 or something like that, city buildings that are getting solar array, so I'm looking forward to that this summer. And then just kind of a heads up, I know our elected officials, our council members, have been getting a lot of feedback recently, which is kind of surprising, on the data center. And with a lot of misinformation. I know staff has met with a couple of residents. There's just, I think they hear about these 300,000 square foot data centers, feeling that's what's coming to town, and concerns about blackouts and energy rates going up and not enough water, and so we've had to, we address some of that. And I've encouraged people to come up and talk with the utility staff. I'm not sure if they have, but just kind of want to pass that along to you guys, that even though those projects were kind of addressed several months ago, for some reason now they've made it to the public. So even though we had public hearings and whatnot on them, but so. Otherwise, that's it for me. So.
All right, thanks, Matt. Move on to divisions. Dan?
Nothing today. As Matt said, we did get all 5 of our solar projects grants awarded to us this last month, and we've been working with our 3 different developers now. Us and the city, we have the same 3 developers on all the projects for a total of 19 projects. So we've been meeting with them these last few weeks, setting those things up, and they'll be rolling along probably here in the next few months. Also, on Friday, Electric Cities out of North Carolina called for a mutual aid event for the storm that was coming out. So MUA put up a notice to all Minnesota utilities. We had 2 volunteers from Hutchinson that went along. We took our digger truck out. We left on Saturday morning, got out there basically Sunday night, sat there in North Carolina, Kings Point, North Carolina, where we were going to work, and the storm rolled through, but it rolled through at just snow, not ice. So thankfully there was no damage in that area. And then all the damage was located in Tennessee more with TVA. So they had the help they needed, and we turned around, and the guys drove in about 2 o'clock today, so.
Oh,
So it was a nice, long 3-4 day road trip. so.
Wow.
Take a
But,
nice drive across the country.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess like we said, like they said, it's better to have you there and not need
Yeah,
you. So-
Absolutely.
So, just gonna update you that we did attend that this year. So.
Thank
I
you.
think it's important that we were able to do that, and we have
Right.
people that are willing to
Yeah.
volunteer. I think that shows a lot.
I think that's the number one thing, yeah, when you have the opportunity and have the people that wanna go help, and I think there was, I haven't got the final detail, but up to 30-some trucks that went from Minnesota.
Wow.
It was a good group again, so.
There's a lot there. And I think the last I heard, there was about 500,000 people still without power. It was up over 1 million when the storm came through, so yeah, Dave mentioned a lot. Most of it was Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana. That's where they got the 1/4 to 1/2 inch of freezing rain. So they've got over half the people back up and running, got about another 500,000 left that they got to do. Again, they're going to have to rebuild some transmission lines down in that area, and then a lot of the distribution side of things is a mess down there too, but they want to get the people up and running, and then they've got a long period ahead of them where they're going to have to rebuild infrastructures and networks down there. So some parts kind of skipped away with the snow, but some parts didn't. So they're gonna have some outages for a while, but they're gonna try to hopefully get them all on in the next week. So, and I'll touch a little bit on that storm Fern one, just in my opinion.
No real updates on LM6000. GE is still trying to iron out the details with the owner of the LPT. They're hoping to have something to present to Jeremy and I by the end of January, which is the end of the week. So hopefully by the end of, or by our next commission meeting, we'll have something to present. So that's all I have.
What does LPT stand for?
Low pressure turbine.
Well, if things move any quicker and we need to meet to get things moving, I
Yeah.
think we're all willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Human Resources. Angie?
I've just been working on OSHA logs and pay equity.
All right. Thank you. Legal. Mark? anything
Nothing
today?
today.
One of these days. 6E, General Manager.
I'll find them something next month.
You usually do.
It's so optimistic. I did send you guys just a kind of a business update, so if you guys had a chance to read through some of that stuff. So you know, working on a lot of contract stuff, and hopefully we'll get some of those ironed up here and buttoned up here in the next couple months here, and then there'll be a few other ones that'll come probably forward here this summer, April, May sometime, probably late spring. So just working through some of those things, working with our data center partner just to make sure that they're getting things in order for, we're going to have some deadlines here with the MISA market, so we need to make sure that we're all on the same page and have things coordinated as that stuff continually moves forward from that side of things. And then really just touch base on the Storm Fern. Maybe some of you guys have watched and read a lot of that stuff. Maybe some of you haven't. We touch a little bit on the electric side of things, with just outages and infrastructure down. But really on the gas side of things, there was obviously a significant impact with this severe cold weather and extreme cold weather as well. So just giving you guys a little bit more history into kind of how the industry works in the gas side. Things like this happen. So on January 15th, we got an operational flow order from Northern Border Pipeline. So there were 30 pipelines around the country that basically issued these OFOs, essentially saying, you guys need to make sure that whatever you're going to consume in natural gas, you're actually nomming that amount of gas to keep the integrity of the pipeline system from having critical issues. And so that went out on the 15th. And that's still in place through the 30th as of right now. And so when you get these extreme weather events all over the country and it puts significant demand on gas, a lot of times these pipeline systems want to make sure that people they're doing the right things, right? Like, hey, buy what you need, don't underbuy, don't leave the pipelines in a negative or positive imbalance and create integrity issues for the infrastructure. So that went in place, so we've been following that piece as well. Consequently, when it gets cold down south, and we've touched on this with Storm Uri, some of you guys were around and we've touched on that, and the press release went out. There's a significant demand for natural gas. The southern parts of the state, United States, they use generation to heat their homes with electricity. So when natural gas is needed significantly down south, but it's also cold up here, which is just normal demand up in the northern region, it starts putting a significant pressure on the natural gas volumes and consumption that are needed. As I read through the Department of Energy's information, they still had some significant issues that they had with Storm Uri back in 2021. They had 10% of their wellheads froze again down there, so they had a lack of production. 10% of less production going on in the midst of significant demand. So I just got this webinar today. They said almost 3 of the markets, MISO, PJM, New England ISO, and New York almost hit peak records in electricity demand over this storm because it got significantly cold. So it puts obviously upward pressure on generation. So more supply, more demand for gas, increase the market prices for gas. And they're still elevated relative to what you normally see. So back on January 22nd, when we were rolling into this storm, gas prices went from $3.77 to $10 on January 22nd. On January 23rd, it jumped up to almost $71. Then over the weekend, last Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it came down to $41. And so keep that frame of reference when we're normally paying $2 or $3 or $3.50. Went down to $41, jumped back up to $67 in MMBTU on gas day 27, and then gas day 28, it came down a little bit to $12. So to put that in perspective for you guys, the first 22 days of the month in January, we spent $300,000 on gas. The last 5 days, we've spent almost $800,000. And we still have several more days to go, and there'll be some elevated pricing there. What I've also heard is there's going to be an extended period of cold. We're going to get a little break here, but then the forecasts are showing that the cold's going to retreat, but it's going to come back in February, is what the modeling is showing now. So they think that New England, the eastern part of this country, is going to stay well below average into large parts of February and then finally break in March. And so we're about 1 degree below average is what they're saying for us for February, but I think we could continually see some extended periods of time going into February where we're going to have some of that. Maybe not to the level of some of the storms, but certainly the cold weather. We're going to have some of that, so we're going to have to kind of watch kind of how that plays out. But that's going to put upward pressure on prices as well. And so, obviously we hedge as much as we can, or we hedge a big portion of it. We don't want to overbuy because if it's a unseasonably warm season, then we end up having to sell it back at a loss. So we're paying for gas we can't use. And so we'll look at a few other instruments that we could use. You're always going to pay a premium for those things. And so, maybe we may need to look at that. The piece I think is important, because I've had that conversation with a couple of our big customers in town that are transporting in the pipeline, is, 350 days of the year, the spot market price actually helps you. It brings your overall gas price down. It's when you get these extreme weather events around the entire country that they skyrocket for different reasons. Some people call
Texas is the problem.
Texas is part of it. Production, where you want to transport the gas. When they elevate market prices around, people are going to push their gas where the best pricing is, right?
So Texas won't do anything to protect the wells, so the production doesn't drop because they're stubborn.
Right.
And other than that, it seems like it's the definition of price gouging. I mean, just is.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it.
So I don't think they're federally regulated, are they?
On the electric side, they are, but
On the
on the
gas.
gas side, which was the issue with Storm Uri last time, is they haven't established caps on the natural gas industry, and so you're leaving it open. Like on the electric side, the ERCOT market, they're capped at $1,200 a megawatt hour. So even during those times, the actual pricing could have been higher, but they capped at what you could generate at and what your electric price was going to be. They talked about it after the last Storm Uri, and nothing got done. They did take some legislative action down in Texas to mandate some level of winterizing your equipment. So this will be a telltale time. You're already starting to read some stuff that it maybe wasn't enough for that. So I'm sure this conversation is going to come back up again about, hey, we didn't do enough. We're seeing this again 4 or 5 years later. So there's been a pattern of every 4 or 5 years it's getting cold and significantly cold in lower 48. And so this conversation is going to come back around like it did in 2021. No, thankfully the prices weren't as elevated.
Right.
Because
They
Dan
were a
and
lot worse.
Dan and I like to think the average was $161 over that 4-day period. So we're well below that, but I think we're going to have, even though it's less pricing, I think we're going to have more length of time where it's gonna be more elevated, and so we're just gonna have to kind of play that piece.
Maybe a real change will come after this time.
We'll find out.
Like
So-
I said last time.
So just those things are going on, and then the other piece at the Department of Energy during this extreme weather event, they basically put out waivers to any generation on the east coast of side saying you guys can put all your backup generation on and you can bypass your emissions, standards and your guidelines and your framework because they just needed that much demand for electricity. So, and they do have, the federal government does have that ability in certain situations to allow that to happen, and so they did send out that order going into the weekend that, yeah, you can turn on your fuel oil, you can turn on your diesel, you can turn on stuff that they don't really want you turning on. It's the lesser two evils, right? If you want electricity, we gotta turn on everything we can to match the load, so. So that just kinda giving you a perspective into a little bit deeper dive into what type of havoc those types of storms create, but, so. And as our kind of month wraps up, stay in communication with you guys to really see kind of what the final impact is gonna be and how we benchmark that against our rate stabilization funds, and may come to you and ask you to consider a few options, so we'll see ultimately where it goes after. So probably be looking for something, I would say the first week of February, because we'll start doing billing first week of February, and by that time I'll have all the numbers and I'll look at things, and so I may be sending out some communication around that time if I think it's where we need to probably have a conversation about extending some situations or something, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Jeremy. Agenda item 7, looks like we have policies 2 to review and 2 to approve. Angie?
Yes, correct. The first one to make changes to is the introduction. We're just removing the word director out of that policy since we do not have directors here. It's just managers. And then down in the definitions in staff personnel, again, updating the word director to manager for natural gas, and then removing the computer system analysis since that position does not exist anymore. That was something that we had put in place last year, where we combined it with the account supervisor position, and then just adding the /HR to my position that should have been done a couple of years ago, but was missed. Sorry.
Sounds good.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended policy changes.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policies 8, 7B are approved. Item 8, unfinished business. It doesn't look like we have any. So we'll move on to new business. Agenda item 9A is to review the annual solar production.
Yeah, every year I give a little update on how our solar field, our 625 kW solar field is producing. So last year it operated at about a 16.4% capacity factor. Production was down as compared to 2024. The main reason for that is we did have an inverter, 2 inverters that were going back and forth, and 1 inverter that did fail, and it was tough to get it replaced took about 3.5, 4 months. So even though it was not fully producing, with the inverter being out, it still operated pretty well as far as capacity goes. And then we also, I attached the pricing to what that would show for savings over the market price. And even though it was producing a little bit less than 2024, it actually saved a little more due to LMP pricing being pretty high compared to 2024. I think that's pretty much the main focus of that update. And there's a little bit of a graph attached as well, kind of comparing the 22 to 25, how that production has been. In 24 and 25, you'll notice that's where we noticed the inverters issue started. So, any questions on that?
How many more of those can go bad?
Inverters? Well, we have 5 total. 1 is failed, it was warranty, so that was good. I still have a couple, this was last year warranty on them, I think it was a 5-year. But there's still opportunity to go bad yet. But
It happens right after warranty. So.
of course, yeah. So let's see what happens in the next 2-3 years, right?
All right. Thanks, Dave. Agenda item 9B is to approve the cogeneration and small power production tariffs. On this one, I need to abstain from this vote because I have a solar array on top of my building, so. Go ahead, Dave.
So every year we need to review the tariff and then approve the new tariff, which is based off of 2020 previous years' average retail rate for each class of ratepayer. So this year, the new average retail rate looking to approve is for Schedule 1, this is the average retail rate, and that's for our residential, small general, and large general classes, looking to approve those average rates for that. And for Schedule 4 is our wholesale rate. And that's all from 2025's information. And those will be what we use those rates to what we use for buyback of any excess produced power.
All right, thanks. Any questions from the commissioners on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the cogeneration and small power production tariff.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9B is approved. Agenda item 9C is to review the 2025 Distributed Energy Resources Generation Report.
All right, and again, this requires us to review we have to have adopted policies and rules for our cogeneration, which we have. We just have to review those every year. Now, there hasn't been any changes. There's no changes this year recommended. We do have a total of 21 solar arrays on our system. 13 are commercial, 7 are residential, and then of course our 1 utility owned.
So that'll pretty much double after the city and utility
2 year
projects.
Yeah, then we'll have another 19 more, exactly, correct. And again, of those 21, 5 are larger than 40 kW. We do allow larger than 40 kW systems as long as they use that power on site. All the systems going in that we're doing are going to be below 40 as part of the grant. And attached is the annual production from all the solar attached to our system. And what was that? I'm sorry. It shows basically all of our systems combined with what we net meter to them and then what we buy back. And then we split that out. We also have to split that out to the 40 and below, what we net meter and what we buy back. And the one thing I want to point out from here is all the power we're buying back is from the systems that are below 40 kW. We have 3 systems that are basically attached to storage sheds that have not a lot of use. So we're buying all that back. And that's where that's coming from, is from the net metering is overproduction. So. And I think that's all for that update. If there's any other questions about what's on our system today.
No, I'm good.
For me.
All right. Thanks, Dave. 9D is to approve the pay equity report. Angie?
HUC is required to submit a pay equity report every 3 years. So now this report that I'm reporting on is for 2025 data. Staff's happy to report that we're in compliance this year as well. The attached report that I have just needs to be signed at today's meeting if you approve it, and then I'll be submitting that by the January 31st deadline. The information that you see in there is in compliance in regards to the pay equity requirements. The T-test results that are used, the value of the degrees of freedom of 44 with the value of T of negative 4.299. That's in section 2 of the report. Compliance report is below the value of T on the T-test table of 1.684. It's kind of a complicated calculation they use, and they actually say that when I'm reading and trying to figure this out that it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah. So I'm happy to report, below the 1.684. So I'm just asking for the commission to approve so I can submit it to the state. We won't get official passing until later in the year. That usually comes, I think, around the April timeframe, if I remember right, from 3 years ago. But I did talk to someone from MMB just because I'm like, oh, this is a little different, so I just want to make sure, and she did assure me that we were in compliance, so I felt better.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2026 pay equity report.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second.
second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda item 9D is approved. 9E is to approve change order number 2, Hutchinson Substation Control Enclosure Modifications. Dan?
While the building was being built, we had a couple of design changes, and so those are, this cost covers that time and materials by EP2 to make those changes that we initiated. Just some basic, change some of the functionality inside the building. This is for all the electronics and stuff inside the building, not the building structure itself, but some electronics and things like rewiring and stuff like that. Some modifications that came along in that year while it was being built.
Is that the end of any changes?
Changes, yes. There should be a 5% left on the payment for the total project. And that'll happen once we button everything up and small punch list items are taken care of. So that should be coming here this spring. So there's just 5% left of the total left to be paid along with this change order.
All right, any other questions on that?
Make a motion to approve the control enclosure change order number 2.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 9E is approved. Agenda item 9F is to approve advertisement for bids for the Plant 1 substation transformer. Also Dan.
So last month's meeting, I mentioned the timeline for the Wilmer line. It's kind of somewhat been established now, and that we probably have to start moving towards the Plant 1 rebuild because of the long lead times on transformers, things like that. So we want to get a jump on that right away, and this is the longest lead time is the transformer. We're projected to be about 3 years, so we want to get going on that, and this just kind of gets that ball rolling. Is go for bids on this transformer. I did want to explain a little something. We do have a base bid and an alternate bid. Right now the plan is to more than likely install 1 transformer down at the substation. That may change, but it's unlikely. But so we want to go out there for 2 in case for the option, if we want to get that second one, in case something changes in the next 3 months when we award the contract. We don't have to scrap everything and start over. And that's the same with the different sizes of transformers. The alternate bid is for a smaller transformer. And so we just want to have our bases covered in case something changes here in the next 3 months, that we have that option to take either or 1 or 2. So we have that in the contract specs that we can take 1 or 2 of either size. So that's why there's kind of just trying to cover all of our bases there in case something changes and we have to start all over again and throw away 4 months of work waiting.
Yeah, with the lead times, that's,
Yeah.
I don't know what else you're supposed to do.
So what are the factors that would move you from 1 to 2?
Yes, maybe you should touch on kind of that whole timeline, how it started.
Yeah, there's kind of an arc to that. We had started with the 1 transformer and 2 circuit breaker type design. And then the more we talked about it, we said, let's just go with the 2 transformers and 4 circuit breaker design. It's more reliable and redundant. So we started working down that path. And then we have to submit this information to a transmission working group. And they have to sign off on these costs because these costs are socialized costs and all the transmission owners feel that, just like we feel it too. And they said that's too much to bite off in this first phase to have the 2 transformers and the 4 breakers. Mostly because it's distribution but it bleeds over into the transmission bucket where those costs that affect these other owners. So that's just too much to do right now. You guys can do it later if you want, or if you need to, but they said we advise you to pare that down because they'd probably get rejected. So we just scramble quick and pare it down to 1 transformer, 2 breakers type of design. But we left it as 2 and 2 in case somebody changes their mind higher up than us that said, yep, no, go ahead with it. So it's about an $8 million difference. Not all of it's transmission. There's a balance there, but so the 2 transformer and 4 breaker design is an $18 million estimate, where 1 transformer and 2 breakers half is roughly $10 million. So it's substantially less, both on distribution and transmission. But then once we gave them this plan and estimate, they said, "Yep, go for it." So right now we're going forward with options, but it's more than likely going to be the 1 transformer and 2 breaker design. All comes down to it. So when we bring the contract to award the contract, we plan on doing that in April. That's probably what it's going to be, is the 1 transformer. So
And that's just for the substation portion of the project.
yeah,
It doesn't have anything to do with the actual transmission line and stuff, that's,
Litchfield's kind of going through the same thing. They have a couple different substations they have to rebuild and for this line, and so.
Significant costs either direction. I can understand and appreciate the want of keeping it more reasonable along the way too. Makes sense. Even though you want to build for the future, be ready.
We'll design it that way so we are ready. So we'll have the footprint of this substation ready to go, but we just won't do all the infrastructure and a lot of civil work and pour the foundations, things like that. But it'll be there and there'll be space available in case it's 5, 10, maybe 20 years down the road when they.
Can we tour it when it's done?
What's that?
Can we get a tour once it's done?
Sure. Hutchinson, want to come up to that one? Oh, that's kind of a mess right now. You want to wait till summer.
We'll wait till it's
I'll
done.
give you a couple hard hats, you can go.
Let it warm up too.
Yeah, I advise that.
All right, then, there's no other questions. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the plant number 1 substation transformer. Advertisement for bids.
Second.
Motion by Kathy and second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda item 9F is approved. Leads us to agenda item 10, which is to adjourn. Care to make a motion?
So move.
Motion by Don,
Second.
second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Yay.
Then we are adjourned.